Hey everyone, Mike from AMB. Welcome to the AMB HQ here in sunny southeast Queensland. Just looking at the brand new Trek Fuel EXe. So this is an all new e-bike from Trek using an all new motor system as well. If you're familiar with the Fuel EX, you know it's a really well-rounded trail bike. Bit of a favourite here in the AMB offices. Some small changes to make it the Fuel EXe. It's got a 150mm travel fork, 140mm travel on the back end, 29er wheels, and our EXe, which is a 9.9 axis model right here, is under 19 kilos on the scales. In fact, it's 18.47 kilos as you see it. There's lots to go into about the new TQ motor and the models that are available here in Australia, and of course how it rides. So you can click through to the timestamps below to jump to what you're interested in. So there's an all new e-mountain bike motor in the Trek Fuel EXe. It's the TQ HPR50. So it has 50 Newton meters of torque, a maximum 300 watts of assistance, and it comes with a 360 watt hour in-tube battery. So the Trek Fuel EXe is a mid-power mountain bike that's brand new to the Trek e-mountain bike range, sitting below the rail. So it's got less torque and less battery size in the rail, and also less travel as well. So the frame itself is only available in carbon with an alloy rocker link. It's got internal routing and an easily removable battery. The Fuel EXe has popular Trek design features like the MinoLink, which lets you have adjustable geometry, so for the high and low setting, and also the active braking pivot, rear pivot. What you will notice is there's no knock block for the headset, because Trek needed the room for the integrated display, which sits really neatly into the top tube. A few things that you might notice from bikes like the Slash: it's got a 34.9mm seat tube, which gives greater stiffness to the frame, and you tend to get greater dropper reliability as well. Trek have also included the Bontrager bits tool. It's got all the essentials at hand. It sits right in the steerer tube. Just don't forget your plug kit, a tube and a pump, and you should be able to keep yourself rolling for a whole lot of mid-trail maintenance. As a trail bike, the Fuel EXe has a maximum tyre capacity of 2.5 inches, which is what all the bikes come stock with, and it can take a 30 to 34 tooth chain ring with clearance with the swing arm. The swing arm has a direct mount for a 180mm rotor and can take a 203mm rotor, which is what the bikes come stock with. The speed sensor is neatly tucked into the inside of the rear dropout, and on the drive side you'll find the SRAM universal derailleur hanger, which means even if you are out and about, you're going to find increasingly there are more options to get spares when you're on the road. There's some great chain slap protection on the inside of the swing arm too, to make sure you've got a quiet ride. Trek are doing the Fuel EXe in 4 frame sizes, from small through to extra large. Our test bike that we've got here is a large. I'm about 178 centimeters, and large is my preference on fit, as I'm used to having a long reach. Every frame size can fit a water bottle inside the main frame, which is important because that's where a range extender battery can fit. So there's a 160 watt hour range extender bottle battery that can fit in a water bottle mount and plug straight into the charge port. Our test bike has the trunnion mount RockShox Super Deluxe Ultimate Airwiz RC-T2 shock, and it comes in the 205 by 60mm stroke sizing. Other models in the Trek Fuel EXe range use the RockShox Super Deluxe Select Plus, Deluxe Select Plus, or the Fox Float X. But Trek claim that the Fox DHX and any coil shock from Fox or RockShox are compatible within the right sizing. So if that's what you're after, it's an easy upgrade you can do down the track. And what about the geometry? Trek made a point that they just wanted to make an e-bike that you wanted to get on and ride. And so a big part of that, especially for a trail bike, is making sure that the geometry is bang on what you want it to be. So being a 29er with 150mm travel fork and 140mm travel in the back end, they went with some pretty, I wouldn't say progressive numbers, but kind of really what you'd be looking for when you're looking for a capable trail bike. So you've got a 65-degree head angle, a 77-degree seat angle, so it's nice and steep. And then the reach on the large here is about 485mm, and the wheelbase is just under 1250mm. The chainstay length is 440mm, which is nice and short, and that's possible because of the new TQ HPR50 motor, which is absolutely tiny. Trek being Trek, you do get some adjustability in that. So there is a MinoLink, so you can have it in a high setting or a low setting. The bikes come in the low setting, and that's how I rode it the whole time here up around Queensland, just because I don't find it for the rocks I needed extra pedal clearance, but I probably would try the high setting if I lived somewhere with more rocks and wanted to maintain that pedal clearance to the ground. Interestingly, although this is a 29er, Trek do say it is 100% mullet approved. So if you want to chuck a 27.5-inch wheel in the back end, you can, but they do say you need to run the geometry for the MinoLink in the high setting to do so. You can also put a 160mm travel fork on the front if you'd like to, but that's the limit. Given the small size of the TQ motor, Trek have made a bike that's got geometry like you'd see on a non-assist trail bike, and that's probably part of the aim in being able to make a bike that rides so well as a mid-power e-bike. Okay, so this is the first time the bike world has seen this new motor from TQ, who are based out of Bavaria. It's the HPR50 system, and there's a lot of really cool detail with it. So let's jump right into it. So Bavaria, Germany, southern Germany, is the land of precision engineering. So whether that's cuckoo clocks, fast cars, impressive architecture, they're kind of known for that. So TQ roughly translate to technology and quality, and they create items for everything from like moon rovers to surgical robots. So e-bike motor, I wouldn't have thought it's a logical progression, but clearly it's something they've done really well. So they've spent a lot of the time in the last decade working on small motors with high torque density, which is relevant for robotics, aerospace, automation, and makes a lot of sense for e-bikes where you want the motor to be as small as possible, so it's not too much of a design constraint, but you also want it to have the torque that you want, so it's actually effective for what you want in an e-bike setting. So the TQ HPR50 drive unit, battery, display, remote, and sensors are all new, and they're currently exclusive to Trek bikes. Given how well this HPR50 motor is working on the Fuel EXe, I wouldn't be surprised if we see it elsewhere in the Trek range, be it on their urban bikes. It's just a nice, compact, lightweight, natural feeling e-bike system. So the whole system weight is just 3,900 grams. So that's for the 50 Newton meter torque rated motor and the 360 watt hour battery. And that, they say, makes it lightest in class for this kind of mid-power system. One of the standout things that I've noticed, and something that Trek have really put a lot of emphasis on, is the noise of the e-bike. And I guess with the Fuel EXe, there just about isn't any. I wouldn't say it is absolutely silent, because you can hear that it does have an e-bike assist sound to it, but it's the quietest I've ever used. I'd say it's even quieter than when my regular non-pedal assist bike needs a service. You do hear the whir of the motor working when you're working on a high cadence and a high support level, at the high support level where you're getting almost 300 watts of resistance. Then you can hear it, but it's still very, very low. So HPR in the name of the motor stands for Harmonic Pin Ring transmission. So unlike other e-bike motors which use gears or belts, the TQ HPR50 system runs right around the bottom bracket spindle and engages at a lot of points all the way around. So this is one of the things that helps keep it a lot quieter, because there's not all the extra points of engagement that you'd get on a chain with gears or one gear meshing into the other. I mean, in my head, and I know this doesn't really make sense, but it's kind of like how a DT Swiss Star Ratchet hub system engages, that it's engaging at many points all the way around on the drive ring. So that's also why it's such a robust system, in that it's not kind of loading up just a few teeth, it's loading up the full system. The Q factor of the TQ motor is a little lower than some. It's at 135 millimeters, so that's the distance between where your feet are on the pedals. Again, that's to help mimic what a regular non-pedal assist bike feels like, and is a part of making sure the bike rides like a regular bike does. Along with the small size of the TQ motor, it means the battery can sit lower in the frame, so you get your center of gravity down nice and low too. And all this adds up to a bike with geometry that's a lot closer to a regular trail bike. So as I stated earlier, you end up with a chainstay length of just 440 millimeters, which is a nice sweet spot in being balanced for a slightly heavier than regular trail bike, but also still being nice and agile as well to get the bike to move around like you want it to. So the 850 gram motor delivers up to 300 watts of assistance with a maximum torque of 50 Newton meters. And you've got 3 customizable modes that you can use to access them. There's just a small toggle switch on the left-hand side, right near your thumb, and your mode will be displayed just with the bars at the base on the display in the top tube. The 1830 gram battery has a 360 watt hour capacity. TQ actually say it's the densest battery in terms of watt hours for size on the market. I haven't compared that to any other batteries to verify that claim, but I'd say that compact size and that density is a key factor in keeping the overall size of the frame tubes down, because at a glance it doesn't even look like a huge massive e-bike. If you need more than 360 watt hours for where you want to ride, Trek do the 160 watt hour range extender, which weighs 900 grams and goes into the bottle holder, and you can expect about a 40% increase in range. Obviously range is massively affected by how you're riding, the weight of the bike, the weight of you, whether you've got really heavy casing tires on. But again, you've got an extra 160 watt hours, so you can expect a much bigger range with that. Charge times for the battery is about 2 hours for the main battery, and about 1 hour if you've got the range extender. There's a charge port on the range extender, so you can charge both the batteries at once if you had 2 chargers, although if you're charging straight into the system, it will charge the main battery first and then the range extender afterwards. Because the battery can be removed out of the frame and it's not a structural part of it, you can ride the bike without the main battery in, or you can even ride it with just the range extender. And at 160 watt hours, the range extender is actually at the upper limit of the battery size you can take as carry-on on a flight. So if you took the main battery out of our bike that we've got here, it would weigh 16.54 kilos plus pedals. And then you've got the range extender in your carry-on. That's actually not too bad to take on your trip to maybe down to Derby or heading over to New Zealand or any trail destination where you want to go ride with a trail e-bike. So it kind of brings that travel with e-bikes a little bit into the picture again, as long as you're happy with 160 watt hours as a range extender at the other side. So about the noise or lack of it, to put numbers to that, Trek claim a 0.1 tonality, which is a measure of frequency. I think the easiest way to think about this is on the first ride, I was astounded at how quiet it is. Like I said, it does still, you can notice the whir of it being an e-bike, but it is absolutely nothing like any other e-bike I've ridden. So if that's always put you off a bit, you really have to test ride one of these. So a big change compared to the Trek rail is how integrated the pedal assist system is. So that I'm talking the head unit and the switch and so on. So the small and quiet motor is one really nice element of the Trek Fuel EXe, but the mode selector and the head unit integrated into the top tube is another. It's really simple to get along with, and I like that it just, it doesn't look like you've overly accessorized your bike. It's just a sleek unit, and it works really well too. The mode selector sits at your left thumb, and you can toggle between low, mid, and high assistance. There's a walk mode as well that you can get just by pressing upwards on the button. It says it right there on the trigger, so you're not going to miss it. The head unit screen's about 50 millimeters and sits into the top tube. It's white on a black backing, so it's pretty easy to read. And you can toggle through the screens to show how much battery you've got left with both a visual indicator and there's a percentage sign as well. And you can also see what support mode you're in and therefore how much range you're going to have left, expressed in how you've been riding so far. The unit can connect to your phone or Ant Plus bike computer as well. So riding the Trek Fuel EXe, you've got the head unit down here, and you've got the mode selector here. So at the moment I've got one bar up, just means I'm riding into low mode. Can trigger that up to the middle mode. Obviously you can adjust these via the Trek Central app for how much support there is, how much it responds, make those changes. And obviously you can go into gears, go up to the high mode as well, which means it's more responsive. It gets much of that, up to that 300 watts assistance. So you can see on the screen, I've got 96% battery, gives me an indicator how much time I've got. The next screen, I've got my anticipated range with time as well. One more screen, got watts. So down the bottom, what the bike's doing and what I'm doing. Now, obviously that's impacted by speed as well. So if I go a bit faster, I'm probably not going to get up to 25k an hour, but it's only going to stop at 300. So you can kind of see what work you're doing and what work the bike's doing. Then I've got my speed and then my average. Obviously I've been digging around, so a bit lower. One interesting thing with the system is that when you get to 10% battery life left, it will dramatically drop your support, so down to 110 watts of assistance. I limped home on that on one of my early rides on the bike, and I definitely appreciated that it didn't drop me, at the last hill to my place with no support at all, because I've done that before on an e-bike, but it did give me that 110 watts of support, and I still got home with a few percentage left. So like any good e-bike system, the new Trek Fuel EXe and the TQ HPR50 motor system, it's got an app to control it. And the main one that I think is probably the most useful across the bike, like this one here, is the Trek Central app. The Trek Central app has a few things going on. Obviously, you can program how you want the motor to work for the assistance, but there's plenty of other extra benefits too, like ride tracking and some setup tools for the bike itself. So the app will pair with tyre whiz and air whiz sensors, which a bike like the 9.9 Access model here has. So if you've gone all out on like a Project 1 model like this one would be, then you can use that for tips for setup and to keep an eye on your pressure settings. Other Bluetooth and ANT Plus sensors can also be paired. So if you want to track, do fitness tracking with a heart rate monitor, go right ahead. It'll all get recorded in the same app. What's really cool is there's a bit of a setup guide. So there's a pressure calculator, and it'll give you suggested pressure settings, sag and rebound settings for the equipment on your bike, for your fork and shock, along with tire pressures based on your weight. Obviously, it's not going to be like certified the best settings for you, but it's a good starting point when you're starting out on your new bike, because e-bikes, even when they're a lighter weight mid-power e-bike like the Trek Fuel EXe, it's a bit more sprung weight. So I find you're often running slightly higher pressures than you would on a non-assist bike. Otherwise, it's too easy to get stuck down in the suspension travel or just damage tires and rims. There's also an option to log your rides in the Trek Central app. So you can import rides if you've done them before and want to use them for navigation, and you can export them to your device as well. So if you want the guidance on your Wahoo or Garmin. The app can also take care of uploads to popular ride-sharing sites like Strava. There is option for navigation via the app if you either want to pull it out of your phone a lot or get a bar mount for your phone. And I kind of suspect that'll end up being used more on urban bikes, where I think we will see this motor land in the Trek range soon. For most of us, the motor tuning is going to be the main function that we use in the Trek Central app. With Eco, Mid and High, you can use a sliding scale to adjust the maximum watts from 0 to 300 watts. And so how much assistance it gives you from 25% to 200%, and what the pedal response is, so from gradual to quick. If you do get stuck, you can obviously set it all back to the default settings, but you can't have a saved profile in there. Say if you were sharing this bike with your partner, you couldn't have your own setup and then change back to their setup when they get to go out for a ride. So that's not quite possible, but who knows, maybe that will be in the future. So the last option is a little subjective in terms of each end, but the tuning will have an impact on how you ride. So whether you want that quick response or the gradual response, that does kind of dictate how your e-bike's going to ride and what you want from it. Some people really want that very punchy acceleration. Other people want it to feel a little bit more natural. So you can play around with it, and again, if you're not really happy with what's happened, you can just restore it to factory settings quite easily. After any changes you make, you will get an idea on what the range will be like in that mode, although obviously the terrain that you're going to take the bike on will have an impact on that as well. And what's really cool with the app with range is that you can see on a map, like as an overlay, where your current battery life and the support mode that you're in will get you. So you might have it brought up when you're out on a ride and not sure you're going to get home. Well, have a look. Is your home within that circle of range? If not, you might need to change what mode that you're in, or take a different tack to how much you're using the support. The app does work as a fitness tracker, so you can also see your ride time live, along with the important details all there, such as the battery percentage, but a lot of that's also going to be on your head unit too. In short, Trek have done a great job making an app to support this new range of bikes. You've got your options there to adjust the TQ HPR50 motor, see the settings, but you've also got a lot of other things tied in, so you don't have to rely on other apps. So here in Australia, we are getting 3 models into the Trek Fuel EXe range. Unfortunately, we won't find bikes like this one on the shop floor at your dealer. The Trek Fuel EXe will land in the Project 1 range later this year, at which point you can spec something like this. But for now, there's just 3 key models that we've got. And it's important to remember all these models share exactly the same frame, motor and battery system. So that all stays the same. It's just the running gear that changes on the bikes. So first up is the Trek Fuel EXe 9.5, and it sells for $9,499.99. It's got the RockShox Gold 35 RL with debonair spring as a fork, so that's 150mm travel fork. The Deluxe Select Plus RT rear shock. Wheels are Alex rims on Bontrager sealed bearing hubs. Got the big XR5 tyres, and then it's pretty much a Dior 12-speed drivetrain throughout with the 4-pot brakes. So that's a really reliable bike, and good one to come in at under 10 grand. Next model up is the Fuel EXe 9.7. So again, it's got the same TQ HPR50 motor and battery system, the same frame, but you get a Fox Rhythm 36 with grip damper, a Fox Performance Floatex on the back, and then you also get the Bontrager Line Comp 30 alloy wheels. Again, you get the XR5 tyres and then a full Shimano SLX 12-speed group set on there. So the Fuel EXe 9.7 price is $10,999.99, so let's call it $11,000. So the next model up is the Trek Fuel EXe 9.8 XT, and that one sells for $12,999 plus the 99 cents. So we'll call it $13,000 between friends. And you'd guess it from the name, but this one's got just about a full Shimano XT spec throughout. So that's brakes, that's cassette, everything. Up front, you've got a RockShox Lyric Select Plus fork. Then for the rear shock, it's got a RockShox Super Deluxe Select Plus RT. You do get the Bontrager Line Elite 30 carbon wheels, and you move up to an SE5 tyre from Bontrager, so a slightly stronger, burlier tyre. You also get the cool integrated Bontrager OCLV carbon bar and stem, which is a really nice shape, I find. I just find the 820mm a bit wide, and I'd be trimming a couple of centimetres off if it was my own. So they're the 3 models that you can get in Australia, but stay tuned if you do want something a little bit fancier, because Project 1 will be available later this year. So that's a big question, isn't it? How does it ride? I mean, Trek said that they made the Fuel EXe to be the e-mountain bike that you want to ride. So to me, that means it's going to be the bike that you want to get on and not second guess, is it too much bike for where you're going? Is it going to give you the assistance for the ride that you want to go on? With e-bikes kind of getting bigger and burlier, sometimes they're not always the bike that you want to ride. And then at the same time, on some group rides, sometimes you don't want to be on your non-assist bike. So they really want to make this the e-bike that you want to get on all the time. And in that sense, I think they've done really well. So after spending a few weeks on the Trek Fuel EXe, I think we'll continue to see more bikes of this kind, so in that 40 to 60 Nm torque range, aimed at letting a slightly smaller and lighter battery keep you out on the bike for longer with a much more natural feel to the ride. And I think that's a really important part, is how natural the support feels, that it's not a jerky kind of assistance setting, which you might be more familiar with some of the older motors and the bikes that they're on. So I kind of like that the TQ motor really blended into the background of riding the Fuel EXe. In part, it's kind of due to how quiet it is, but also the program settings, making sure it doesn't surge too much. It's also how Trek can then keep the weight to 18.47 kilos on this large test bike while not cutting back any of the trail-ready components. So, I mean, I look at this bike, and yes, while it's like a top spec model that you could get in their Project One options later, it is still, you've got big strong tires, you've got big 4-pot brakes on there. It's not cutting corners to make a super lightweight bike. It's just using some really nice gear to do that. And there's a lot to be said about the high-powered big battery e-bikes like a Trek Rail, but depending where you ride, it can be tricky to get the most out of them when you're using the assist, which is typically when you're going uphill. If you like to tackle really technical trails, so up, down and along, then a higher torque e-mountain bike that may weigh 5 or 6 kilos more than something like the Fuel EXe can end up a bit of a handful unless you're used to handling such a big bike. So that's where you'll see people making what can be coined the e-bike lines on trails, which are the lines which avoid any rock ledges or logs because they're just too much of a bike to get up and over them. You know, I've kind of hit the guards and the bumpers on other e-bikes on some trail features, but I never did that on the Trek Fuel EXe because it is an easier bike to move around and you still have the support there when you need it. So I think that for me has been highlighted on a few trails when I was testing them. Even on the first ride I had on the Fuel EXe down at Madeira Pines. So we got taken on this trail called Auto Alley. Maybe you're familiar with it. Traverses a hill and going up and down continually along the trail. I was told if you could ride the whole thing without a dab, you were doing pretty well. I definitely didn't ride the whole trail without a dab. It was a long way off, but that was all about me and not the bike I was on. So I really liked that the Fuel EXe didn't feel like too much bike to move around with the weight shifts or when loading up the suspension to loft over a log or a rock or change lines. So it's a really dynamic bike to ride, and I think that makes it feel a lot more natural and in general more enjoyable too. It's not like getting on, you know, an amusement ride that just surges away from you. More than other e-mountain bikes I've ridden, it responds to riding input really intuitively. But that's not to say that the Trek Fuel EXe can't, you know, charge more technical terrain with the confidence that a lot of e-bikes can. Like often when you get on a high-powered e-bike, it's got that extra weight around it. It's that 22, 23, up to 27, 28 kilos, even 29 for some of the ones I've tested. You know, it's really stable on some rocky and chunky lines, but using the same kind of trails that I've tested bikes like those on, I felt just as confident riding the Trek Fuel EXe. So it's still a 29er trail bike with a 65-degree head angle, long reach, and a reasonably short rear center length. The geometry's spot on. So it handles exactly how I'd expect a modern trail bike to ride. Obviously, the model I've been testing's got some leading suspension from RockShox with the Ultimate Fork and the Super Deluxe Ultimate Shock. And so the suspension platform really delivered. I actually really like how the new Charger 3 RC2 damper in the fork let the bike ride. It does, the low speed compression adjustments are a standout, and you can really adjust the ride height of the front of the bike in terms of how it's kind of handling itself when you're getting into rougher terrain. I hate when a heavier bike starts to get stuck in the middle of its travel, and I love that adjustability on this bike. Obviously, that depends on the fork that's on the Fuel EXe you look at, but I think the platform on its own is a great suspension platform for this bike. In terms of handling, I did keep the Fuel EXe in the low setting on the MinoLink. I think, as I mentioned earlier, if I rode somewhere which had more rock and more single track climbs, I'd certainly use the high setting. Even though the EXe models come with 165mm cranks, I think a little more clearance is always good, so you can keep the crank spinning and the motor on the boil for the assistance on technical features. For my riding, in terms of settings, I like the middle assistance setting, and I only drop back to low on really gradual climbs and flat trails where you'd quickly accelerate out of where any of the assistance was going to be anyway. And then I lifted to the higher settings on steeper and more technical trails where I liked the greater response to it and the extra oomph to keep up and moving over some features. I also used the high setting on descents that had tight corners where I wanted all the help I could get to get back up to speed after over braking for some tight corners. With 300 watts as a maximum assistance, there are times on steep fire trails where it'd still be nice to have more, I guess more support to get you there. Like on something with a Trek Rail. But on trails, and on single track, I never really felt that need. It was only on, the laughably steep fire trail climbs that a high power e-bike can let you just spin away up. It's actually really interesting with the Trek Fuel EXe using the screen on the head unit to show what your power output is and that of the TQ motor. So you can really see where it's giving you the assistance and what work rate, and you can feel how much of a difference that makes. I found it was only at those high levels of support, say 250 watts or above, that the whir of the TQ motor was noticeable. Otherwise, this really was a quiet system on the trails. And yeah, talking about going up, because you know that's what you've got an e-bike for, just so you can self-shuttle, I was actually really impressed with how the bike pedaled. I know it's an e-bike, but it's important that it does pedal well and efficiently. And while it does have a lockout, I've found for seated pedaling, it was super smooth anyway. But with that lockout, if I was riding to the trails, it was a nice and efficient ride. And I probably rode to the trails more often on this than on a high-powered e-mountain bike, because although if I'm going to go over 25k an hour on a flat section of road, there's almost just about no resistance, extra resistance from this e-bike system, whereas on some of the high-powered e-bike systems out there, you really feel that drag when you go above 25k an hour. And while I'd love us to have the 32 kilometers an hour upper limit on e-bikes, we don't at the moment. So it makes a bit of a difference to me if a bike can feel really natural as it moves into that 25k an hour and above speed, as opposed to feeling like you've gone through a patch of mud. So as for range, obviously that's always a big question with an e-bike. I was comfortably getting rides of 2.5, maybe 3 hours with up to about 1,500 meters of climbing with anywhere from 10 to 30% battery left. I wasn't doing it in all-in-one mode. I was using whatever mode I wanted, either the low, mid or high, just whatever I needed to get the ride done. Now, obviously range is going to be impacted on how you're riding the bike. Trek claim it'll be anywhere from 2 to 5 hours, and that's because terrain, your weight, and the modes that you use are going to have an impact. But I found that it was really enough to get out on the bike a lot, and I didn't find it something I had to keep an eye on too much to modify how I was riding for most riding. But you know, if you want to go and really have a big increase on that, you can look at getting a range extender to make sure you've got something in the back pocket for a little bit of extra. So the final question, I think, with the Trek Fuel EXe is, who does it suit? You've got to see that the e-bike market has been expanding massively over the past few years, and we're getting those high power, high travel bikes that are amazingly capable. You can watch any edit and see how people are riding with them. But is that the e-bike that you need, and is that the e-bike that you want to get on and ride the most? And that's where the Trek Fuel EXe can fit in. If you're not going to be needing that high power, high weight, high torque e-bike. The Fuel EXe, the analog non-e-bike version, has always been known as one of the most versatile trail bikes around, and I think the EXe follows exactly in those footsteps. Walks a balance of being burly enough for a lot of trails and light enough for a lot of types of riding. So I'm definitely not going to say this is the one bike to rule them all, but it really is a fantastic all-rounder. I mean, if your aim is self-shuttling, then it's going to do that, no worries. I mean, if your aim is getting more descending time in for your time on the bike, so before work or after work, going out and jamming it up some climbs to get some more descents in, you'll get that as well. If you're on a bike that rides in a pretty similar fashion to a regular trail bike, then I reckon the Fuel EXe is a great bike to look at for that. While I didn't get the option to use the range extender, with this on hand, the Fuel EXe really suits someone who wants to get lots of trail time in, in the evenings or the afternoons, and still be able to have a huge day out on the weekend. So it's fun to ride. I had great feedback from the pedal input. You can tune that with the app to get exactly what you want, but I think as a stock tune, Trek have done a fantastic job with the TQ HPR50 motor. They've also done a great job with the looks. It shouldn't matter, but if you're dropping a lot of money on a bike, you've got to like how it looks, and I think it's a nice integrated look. It's quite a subtle appearance, and for a lot of people, they'll really appreciate that. Better yet, the pricing for a full carbon frame with a top-notch motor and battery system is surprisingly good within the realms of e-mountain bike pricing. I think the Fuel EXe blurs the lines between going for a ride and going for an e-bike ride. It's a natural feeling bike to ride and an excellent player in the growing mid-power e-mountain bike market. If it's something you reckon you're considering, I'd certainly recommend your local Trek dealer to find out about availability. If you've got any further questions about the Trek Fuel EXe that I haven't really hit in the review, drop a comment below and I'll make sure I answer it. Otherwise, make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming videos. Thanks for joining in.